Okay, today is the third and final part of 1.5. This is just generally other types of equations that we need to know how to solve. So this first problem, example number 10, is solve the equation 3 over x minus 2 over x minus 3 equals negative 12x squared minus 9. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to break that x squared minus 9 down before we get started just to make sure I understand it correctly. So this is going to be 3 over x minus 2 over x minus 3 equals negative 12, and then this side breaks down to x plus 3, x minus 3. And then whenever we see fractions like that, we want to make sure they have the common denominator. So we are going to make sure we get our common denominator here, which is going to be a combination of all those denominators. So we need to have x, we need to have 1 x minus 3, and we also need to have an x plus 3. We're going to multiply everything together. Alright, so now we need to multiply everything up here times that new denominator, or times something to get to that new denominator. So I know this needs to be multiplied by x minus 3, x plus 3. And then this one needs to be multiplied by x and x plus 3. And this one just needs to be multiplied by x, since it has the other two already. So our new answer is going to be 3 x minus 3, x plus 3 on the top, minus 2 x plus 3 on the top, equals negative 12 x. And actually, since they all have the same denominator, we can kind of get rid of the denominator and just assume, like if we multiplied all the sides by the denominator, it would be canceled out. So I can show that work real quick. So x minus 3, we can actually make this one big fraction over here since they have a common denominator. I can just make it all over that fraction one time, and then the same over here. Okay, and then basically if you multiply that x times x minus 3 to get rid of it over here, we got to start solving our algebra, right? All that goes away with all this down here as 3 separate terms, the x and the x minus 3, and then the x plus 3. And then if we multiply it on this side, it also goes away. So that's why I was saying we could just rewrite it. So if we multiplied that out, that top thing becomes 3x squared minus 27 if you multiply that out. And then this side becomes minus 2x squared minus 6. And then we have negative 12x there. Okay, and then we just got to keep solving it. It ends up being x squared minus 6x minus 27. If we add that 12x, it becomes positive 6x on this side. And then if you did a t-chart on the side over here, okay, you would end up getting x minus 3x plus 9. And those are our two answers. X equals negative 9 and x equals positive 3. Okay, you can always plug those back in and check your work, although that would be a lot of steps to fill out, but it should come out to the right answer. Okay, example number 11 is solve this equation. 2x equals 1 minus square root of 2 minus x. So the first thing that's the most scary is that square root of x. That square root. So we just need to figure out how to get that alone, and then we can do the opposite of square root, which is squared. So I'm going to start getting that alone. I'm going to subtract this 1. And there's actually still a negative over here. So if that negative scares you, it's like having a negative 1 here. So I'm just going to divide that negative 1 on both sides. And I get, actually if you divide, it becomes negative 2x plus 1, which is the same as 1 minus 2x. Okay, and then to get rid of the square root over here, I'm going to squared, which gets kind of cancels that square root and that square, so I have to square this side. Okay, so then if you multiply all that out and do the whole FOIL, you get 4x squared minus 4x plus 1 equals 2 minus x, and then you start getting everything on one side, and you get 4x squared. When you add an x, it becomes minus 3x. When you subtract 2, it becomes minus 1. And then if you do a t-chart over here, 4 times negative 1 is negative 4, and negative 3, you need two numbers that multiply to negative 4 and add up to negative 3. That is negative 3 and negative 1. No, sorry, negative 4. Negative 4 and positive 1. Okay, and then if you don't remember how to do this, I'm going to do this whole step for you. So this is 4x squared. You break this down into those two factors that you've got. So you got negative 4x and positive 1x. Okay, and then you start grouping. This is what you do when there's a number in front up here. Okay, so then you got to break that down, and that becomes, you pull out a 4x here, and you get x minus 1. And then you can't pull anything out over here, so you basically pull out a 1 and you get x minus 1 on the inside. So then you take this and you, oh, this should have been an x, sorry. So you take 4x plus 1 and then x minus 1 equals 0, and then you set those both equal to 0. Okay. Example 12, find all the solutions to this equation. This is x to the 4th minus 8x squared plus 8 equals 0. So we've actually never done an x to the 4th. I don't know if you have, but we can break it down to an x to a squared problem if we change this to something squared. Okay, so let's assume w equals x squared. Okay, so if we rewrite this equation in the forms of x squareds, we're going to get, this becomes x squared squared, right? We want that squared on the outside. And then this becomes 8, and then we've got our x squared, and then we've got 8. Okay, so now we need to pretend w is x squared. So here's this changes to w right here. We still have a squared on the outside. And then this x squared just changes straight to w. And actually now it's an equation that we can solve pretty easily. I'm going to solve it with the quadratic equation, which we just learned is x equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac over 2a. So I'm going to plug in what I have here. My a is going to be this 1 in front of the w squared. My b is negative 8, and my c is 8. So x equals negative 8 is positive 8, plus or minus the square root of negative 8 squared minus 4ac over 2a. So you end up with Actually, I wrote this incorrectly. This should be a W because we're not finding x, we're finding W. Because these are w's in this equation we're using. So this actually becomes w equals, and you get 4 plus or minus 2 square root of 2. And then we're not really done because we need to find x. So we actually pretend, remember, we said w was equal to x squared. So actually we can just plug that in. And then we can start solving. We can take the square root of both sides, okay, to get x by itself. And we get x equals plus or minus the square root of 4 plus or minus 2 square root of 2. Now that gives us 4 options for answers because this was an x to the 4th problem to start with. So that means there are 4 solutions. So our 4 solutions are going to be x equals positive square root of 4 plus 2 square root of 2. So that's one option. The next option is negative, just change the outside and leave the inside the same. Negative square root of 4 plus 2 square root of 2. The next option is positive square root of 4, and we change the minus on the inside. And the last one is all negatives. Negative square root of 4 minus 2 square root of 2. Or not square root of 2, sorry. Oh yeah, it is. And then so we get, if you plug those into your calculator, you get 4 answers. You get x equals 2.61, x equals 1.08, x equals negative 2.61, and x equals negative 1.08. So plug that in, see if that works. Those are your 4 answers there. All right, the last one is there's 2 more examples. Find all solutions of the equation x to the 1/3 plus x to the 1/6 minus 2 equals 0. Again, this is a problem we can't solve with what we know. We need to put it into x squareds. So we need to do that w substitution thing again, okay? So we need to assume that w, just make w this w equals, just make w this middle number here, okay? This middle value, just like it was up here. We made w this middle value here, x squared. So we're actually going to do that down here. That's the trick for this. So we're going to assume w is x to the 1/6, okay? So now, if we change this into 1/6 values, this actually becomes x to the 1/6 squared, because 1/6 times 1/6 becomes 1/3, okay? And then you can do that math to see, and then this stays to the 1/6. So actually this becomes w, because remember we said w is x to the 1/6 squared plus just w minus 2 equals 0, and this is something we can solve. So in this one actually factors, so we can factor this down into, you can do your t-chart on the side if you need to, w minus 1, w plus 2 equals 0, so we get that w minus 1 equals 0, and w plus 2 equals 0. So w equals 1, or w equals negative 2. Now remember, w is x to the 1/6. So x to the 1/6 actually equals 1, or x to the 1/6 actually equals negative 2. And the way to solve this is anything to the 1/6, 1 to any number is going to be 1. Let's see, I'm trying to decide how to do this. Oh, I see. So sorry, they skipped a step. What you need to do is, instead of to the 1/6, you need to take it to the 6th, because that cancels out the 1/6. So the same thing over here. So we get x equals 1, because 1 to the 6th is still 1, okay? And then on this side, you take this to the 6th power, and you take negative 2 to the 6th. That means it's going to be positive. So multiply negative 2 times itself 6 times, and you get 64. And those are your 2 answers, okay? All right, and the last example is solve the equation absolute value of 2x minus 5 equals 3. This is an absolute value equation, which means if you have your answer in here is negative 3, your answer still comes out to 3 on this side. or if your answer is 3 over here, your answer still comes out to 3 on this side. So we need to split this into two problems. One problem is 2x minus 5 equals negative 3, because what's inside the absolute value bars can be negative 3, or 2x minus 5 can be positive 3. So just remember, you always have to split it right away when you get the absolute value by itself, and then you can start solving. Okay, so your two answers here are just x equals 1 and x equals 4.